Hello, welcome to It's a Woman's World. You are going to have a delightful experience today with our interviewee, Michelle Barclay. I am thrilled to have her be with us today, and there's a lot to learn. I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Nadia Giordana, Susan Strauss, and Candy Pettiford. I'm Barbara Lavallure, and I will be your host today. So, full disclosure, I met Michelle Barclay many years ago. I don't even remember how many years ago, when I was the executive director of a nonprofit keeping seniors out of nursing homes on the east side of St. Paul. And Michelle was involved with the Alzheimer's Association of Minnesota and North Dakota. Then last year, my husband was diagnosed with short-term memory loss due to Alzheimer's. So there was Michelle Barclay, the answer to my prayers, in her course on mindfulness-based dementia care. So I had the privilege of being in her course for 6 weeks, and it was such a blessing. I'd like to have each of the co-hosts say hello and introduce yourself as well.
I'll start things off. Welcome to the show, Michelle. It's so good to have you here. I'm real interested in this subject. My father had Alzheimer's, and certainly, and in my baby boomer peer group, it's a concern. I'm wondering, as a first thing, what would be some of the flags you can look for in someone that you love that might give you a hint as to whether or not they might be suffering from memory loss?
Sure. Well, if someone in your life is repeating things or telling you the same story again and again, certainly in a one sitting or one conversation, that's a warning sign. Um, if somebody is getting lost in maybe more familiar places, that's certainly not normal aging. That may be an indication that there's some kind of problem. And of course, we don't know what may be causing the problem. It could be any number of things, not necessarily Alzheimer's or dementia, but these are just little flags that say, huh, this is different. Maybe I should get it checked out. Also, if someone says they're having trouble with their memory or thinking, it's probably a good idea to get a checkup from the neck up to check it out and see, what might be the cause of that.
Susan.
Yeah, hi Michelle, welcome.
Hi,
Um,
Susan.
I have a healthcare background, so I'm interested in this. And like Nadia, I'm a baby boomer. And I've got friends. I've got one that died. She had a kind of a rare form, posterior cortical atrophy. And it was tough to see her demise. My next door neighbor has just been diagnosed, but I think it's not just wondering about others, but about ourselves as well. You know, the whole adage of, oh gosh, where are my keys? I can't find them. And oh, I forgot that darn phone number. And what's that person's name again? And you begin to think, ooh, what's happening here? So it can be scary to differentiate sort of normal aging. I'm using that term, although I've heard now it's called something cognitive, something or another. I don't, where you don't have Alzheimer's, but you got something. Do you know what that term is? Something cognitive impairment, is that it?
Yeah, mild cognitive impairment, but that's not normal aging either. I mean, memory and thinking is on a continuum like everything else. And people, you don't wake up one day and you have Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. You go through a phase of having sort of milder problems that don't affect your day-to-day life as much, but you notice them. And then there's normal aging, which also includes some changes in memory and thinking. So losing your keys, totally normal. Everybody does that. Forgetting people's names, especially acquaintances, not your family, but
No.
acquaintances, totally normal. Everyone has trouble with names. having that tip of the tongue phenomenon,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and then it comes to you later, that's totally normal. Going to the refrigerator and opening up the door and thinking, what am I doing here? Why did I come in this room? And then
Yeah.
it comes to you, you go back to the living room and sit down, and then you're like, oh yeah, I wanted a glass of water. Totally normal. All of these things are normal. When
So
you
it's more
start
of the
having,
repeating stories or sentences.
that's a warning sign that something more is going on.
Okay.
When someone even within a conversation is telling you the same story. I mean, we all have stories that we repeat because they're good stories, right? But we probably don't repeat them in a 15, 20-minute conversation with somebody.
Okay. Thank you.
Andy,
Well, greetings,
Hello,
Michelle.
Andy.
It's good to have you on. And I have some questions I want to ask you when the time is right. So, but I guess I'd like to hear a little bit about you and how you got started in all this. Kind of give a little something about you, and then I'll ask the question after.
Okay, Candy, thanks. Well, I first got interested in this when I was in high school, and my grandmother had some memory and thinking changes that actually turned out to be vascular dementia. And this was the 80s, and before home care or even assisted living, it was just, there wasn't much available. And so she lived with us for a while. We tried to care for her from a distance, and it was quite difficult. And I thought there's got to be a better way. She really wanted to stay in her home. So I got interested in that. And then I went to graduate school in psychology and studied more and more about aging and um, different things that happen as we age. There's so many good things and so many hard things that happen as we age. And I got really interested in the brain and especially cognitive impairment. And as I started working with people with cognitive impairment, I became more interested in people with dementia because I found that I could do a small intervention, and it would make a huge difference immediately in someone's life. And I liked being able to have that kind of impact, to really make a difference in someone's life. And so that's initially how I got started and how I got interested in this field.
Well, then
you
that
know, Michelle, uh, you've had a very varied background. You've also had many awards. I noticed one for program innovation, which is impressive. So if there's anything you'd like to share about your background, we'd love to hear that. My particular interest is in your mindfulness-based dementia care program. So if you would also share about that. I think that will be of interest to our viewers. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you know, Barbara, worked for the Alzheimer's Association for many years in California first, and then moved here. My husband is from Minneapolis. And so I did a number of things there, and really with a focus. I had a mentor whose focus was on improving healthcare for people with dementia, which is sadly not as good as maybe for some other illnesses. And so really working hard to identify how the brain is working in healthy people, and as that changes, and then do something about it, not just ignore it, which is what happens with most people. And then the results aren't great for that. So I developed many, many different kinds of programs for both people living with cognitive impairment and their partners. And about 10 years ago, I became interested in mindfulness as a treatment or therapy for both people living with the disease and their partners. And ended up partnering with an old friend that I had developed programs with before, who is at the University of Michigan, to pilot here a program called Mindfulness-Based Dementia Care, which is just for care partners. And mindfulness is a skill that you can learn that helps and has been shown through research to help manage stress. And care partnering for someone with, well, really for anyone, I should say, care partnering is stressful. It's a stressful experience, It has many moments of joy and beauty and many moments of grief and sorrow and stress. And so we, in this class, I think, acknowledge both, recognizing moments of joy and really savoring those, as well as recognizing moments that are stressful or filled with grief, and comforting and offering compassion to those, and learning how to dance with difficulty and change. Yeah.
Well, my question was, I was going to ask, what is the difference between I hear Alzheimer's, I
Mm-hmm.
hear dementia, and
Mm-hmm.
then I heard maybe it was on TV saying dementia is a form of diabetes and all this. So, kind
Mm-hmm.
of clear some things up for me, please.
Sure, Candy, that is the number one question that people ask when I speak anywhere. So normally I give a prize for anyone who asks that question. So I'm sorry I don't have a prize for you today.
I'll take my prize. I'll take my prize.
Okay, it's a great question. Dementia is a term, an umbrella term. It's a term that describes a set of symptoms. Um, Kind of like having a cold. You know that generally means that you probably have a runny nose, maybe you have a cough, but it doesn't identify the cause of those symptoms. Alzheimer's disease is the leading cause of dementia. Okay, so Alzheimer's disease is actually a disease that's caused by changes in the brain that produces this symptom cluster, right? Memory loss, changes in language, changes in sensory perception, changes in all sorts of domains in the brain as the disease moves up and back through the brain. Okay, there are many other diseases that cause dementia. I mentioned initially that my grandmother had vascular dementia. That's caused by changes in the vasculature of the brain, the blood vessels, so strokes or small strokes, that can cause dementia. There's, Parkinsonian type dementia that is Lewy body dementia. That has different symptoms. There's frontotemporal dementia. There's the language variant that Susan talked about, I think, or the visual. You can have changes to your occipital lobe, and that can cause a dementia. So really, as the brain is damaged by a variety of different things, it can cause this cluster of symptoms, that is dementia, but it doesn't tell you what's causing it, what disease is causing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
And each disease has its own pathway, its own progression, and its own treatment. So it's important to understand, what is causing this. And not all of them start with memory loss. That's the hallmark of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia, cause of dementia. But other types of dementia may start differently. It may start with a language problem primarily, where people are losing their ability to speak or understand. It may start with parts of speech not online, or not being able to remember certain things, or not being able to see or recognize objects, or things like this, which might indicate a different kind of dementia. Or you may have, some people may have start with sort of sleep problems, sleep disruption, maybe sleep disruption that causes them to act out their dreams. That would be more like Lewy body dementia, or hallucinations, like seeing things that aren't particularly disturbing, but no one else sees. Like usually it's like little animals running around, or something like that. That's more common in Lewy body dementia. So depending on what kind of dementia you have, there may be different treatments, different things that you can expect in terms of course and progression as well.
If you have someone in let's say in your family, someone close to you, where you really are reasonably sure you see some things that the person that you love should probably see a doctor and address the questions that are going to be coming up. How do you broach that subject?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really hard and it's really individual, obviously, because I don't know your family member and everybody's different. But in general, certainly if they're complaining of memory or thinking changes, it's a good door opening to talk about it, to say, I've noticed that too. Is it worrying you? Maybe it's something with your medication. What do you think about bringing this up with your doctor? Let's do a checkup from the neck up. Brain health is really important, and I love you, and I want you to be as healthy as you can be. I mean, think about what would you say if you noticed like a lesion on someone's forehead, or um, some, I have something wrong with my lip. But if you notice like something on someone's lip or whatever, and you love them and they said, "Oh, I got this thing on my lip. What do you think?" I mean, you might say, "Oh, I don't know, but maybe we should get it checked out." It's sort of, think about it that way. I think people are scared, but they're scared of any kind of something wrong. The more you delay finding out what's going on, the more you lose the opportunity to do something about it. And most of the current treatments for dementia are aimed at people who are very early in the disease progression. So the earlier, the better. And also, people have a lot of anxiety about this. You talked about yourself, worrying about your own self. And so just hearing after you get a checkup from the neck up that there's nothing wrong, or maybe it's a medication that's causing this, or maybe something else that can be changed. It relieves a lot of anxiety, and that can relieve memory changes, because anxiety and depression also cause changes in memory and thinking. So maybe those facts will help. If people are really resistant, which they can be about anything, it could be, any kind of thing they're worried about, they can be resistant to seeing the doctor about it. Then I would handle it any way that you would handle any other thing that was wrong that you thought somebody maybe should go to the doctor about. It is scary, and acknowledging this is, I can see that you're worried. That makes me worried too. I'm going to be here with you. We're going to do this together. I love you and want you to be healthy. We're in this together. I mean, just really encouraging that, you're with them. It's probably nothing, but better safe than sorry. That, the things that can be done are most effective early. Let's figure it out together. Or messages that usually resonate with people the most, but your family member the most, and probably have ideas about what you'd say if they had a lesion on their foot or something, or they had a broken toe. Like, what would you say then? They were resistant to going to the doctor.
I remember being a child, and you get together with your family or whatever, and somebody would do something strange or whatever. Then they'd say, "Oh yeah, oh that's an old people's disease." They would say that old people's disease. But is there anybody young? How young can you be to get Alzheimer's or dementia?
Yeah, the youngest person I ever saw was at UCLA. This many years ago, and that person was 32. That is very unusual. It's very unusual for people to get dementia before age, 50, and even really before age 65. But it does happen. It's typically just like heart disease happens to some people in their 30s, but it's not common. And it tends to be more genetically linked. So, you could argue that everything is an old person's disease. I mean, as we age, the body wears down. I mean, most older people have heart problems, or they have arthritis, or they have other processes that are happening. And this is just that same process in the brain. And so, you could argue heart disease is just what happens to old people, or what happens to, or arthritis, or cancer, or, like any number of things that tend to be, as we get older, we're just more at risk. Our bodies have to break down some way. And this is one way. This is one way. Many people who have, of course, cognitive memory and thinking changes have other things going on too. Uh, like we all do, like we all do as we get older. There's just a whole host of things to figure out.
Michelle, could you speak to the causation? I like to read about the brain, and I was reading about it and talking. Of course, they got into Alzheimer's, and they were saying that there is some discussion that perhaps it's not the plaque that's playing the role, but that the plaque might be secondary to a different cause that originates in the gut. Have you read anything about that? And of course, we hear a lot about the gut and the brain anyway, but this particular article, and they're not saying it does, it was a theory that they were proposing. Could you speak to that? Have you read anything about this?
Yes,
The
I
plaque
have.
might be secondary.
Yeah, I think the gut is very important for health overall, and it's been largely ignored. And of course, as Americans, our diet is maybe not the most gut-friendly diet, and that, of course, that has effects on the body, on the vascular system, and on the brain. Now, the brain is the number one consumer of what the heart puts out. So healthy blood vessels and healthy gut, this all impacts. And inflammation is often caused by an unhealthy gut. And so inflammation is a good thing. And think about when you cut yourself, it becomes itchy and red and you get a scab. That's inflammation, and it's meant to heal. And so this is Alzheimer's disease now. So in Alzheimer's disease, as the amyloid plaque starts to build up, you can think of it as like tar building up in the brain, the immune system mobilizes to try to get rid of it. And that is inflammation. And then that inflammation actually kills neighboring nerve cells. So it actually makes it worse. And once the plaque gets to a certain level, there's like a tipping point, and it starts to impact the tangles. So the tangles start happening and the neurons unravel. And so that's when you start seeing the symptoms. The plaque doesn't cause the symptoms. It's once you start seeing the symptoms, the plaque has been building up for years. Many people say that Alzheimer's disease actually begins in midlife, and you don't start seeing the symptoms for 20 years later. But many people can have this plaque in their brains and no symptoms for years and years, which suggests there are things you can do that mitigate that help prevent that from causing symptoms. And things like get a lot of education, read, interact with people, dance, listen to music, reduce your stress, help your gut, take good care of your heart. All these things, even if you have plaque building up, it's going to slow down the process that moves towards having symptoms. And maybe you'll die of something else first because you'll be 100 years old and you still have plaque, but no. And there was a big nun study. I don't know if you guys heard of the nun study, where they looked at nuns, and of course they had all these records on them because they had been nuns since they were young. And many of them journaled, and they analyzed sort of their journaling and their writing and what they did and their, interaction and their reading and, how educated they were. And then when they died, they autopsied their brains and found that there were nuns who had tons of plaque in their brain and no symptoms, and nuns who had very little plaque in their brains and tons of symptoms. They had Alzheimer's disease, they were diagnosed. And it looked like there were lifestyle changes that may have made the difference. So that's hopeful in that in midlife and on, we can, if we stay engaged, if we do these things, it may slow down that process or change the trajectory of that for us. Of course, if you have a genetic predisposition for this and you're getting this earlier in life, the stronger your genetic predisposition, the harder it is to overcome. Just like any disease, right? If you have a genetic predisposition for breast cancer, you're probably going to get it younger, and the environmental factors may play less of a role. But if you don't have a genetic predisposition, you get it when you're breast cancer when you're 85, environment may play a bigger role, or heart disease, or whatever disease. All disease sort of acts similarly that way.
Thank you.
where our time is running short, we've only got a couple of minutes left. One of the things that I learned from you was the term care partner as opposed to caregiver. And I have since taken that on in my sharing about my personal situation as a care partner. And people really like that term. And to me, it also is a better defier. But the thing that I hear from other people who are in similar situations as myself is the word stress. And if you would like to share maybe a couple of stress busters from your training, that will be helpful for people watching.
Sure, Barbara, thank you. I mean, the nice thing about this is that it feels like you're out of control when you're in these situations, but actually you have quite a bit of control. Maybe not over the things that are happening outside of your body, but you have a lot of control about what's happening inside your body. And one of the most powerful things you can do is something called stop, which is just whatever's happening, you just stop. Just stop. Right now, let's do it together. Just stop. You can even close your eyes. That can help you come inside your body and let the outside world sit for a moment. And then take 3 deep breaths. So breathe in as deeply as you can. Fill your lungs. Hold. And then breathe out more slowly as you can. And then do that again. Let's do it one more time. One more time. This is a powerful practice because just these 3 breaths where you breathe in deeply and then breathe out slowly, that activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It turns off your stress response, even for a few moments. And then the O of stop, so the T is take a breath, or 3. The O is just observe. Observe what's happening in your body. You might notice how your toes are feeling or how your hands are feeling right now.
Thank you, Michelle. Unfortunately, our time is up. Great panels, Nadia, Susan, and Candy. Thank you so much for your participation today. We would love to have you back next month. Today, it's been Michelle Barclay, Mindfulness-Based Dementia Care. We hope that you've enjoyed It's a Woman's World. Do come again.